Hello, and welcome to the third week of Arts of the Dynasty and Empire. I'm Jess Son, and I'll be guiding you through the world of ink paintings from the late Joseon period to the colonial period. To understand ink paintings of the Joseon dynasty, we must first look at the painting practices of the social elite, the Yangban literati. Contrary to our understanding of ink wash paintings today, ink paintings in East Asia were inherently tied to calligraphy and literature. The Korean term seohwa is an embodiment of the traditional fusion of painting and writing that only became and were treated as decisively separate entities toward the 20th century. These types of paintings were differentiated from practical paintings or decorative paintings that were typically produced by professional painters. Inkwash painting, while also practiced by professional artists, was deeply embedded in Confucian scholarly traditions and served as a cultural marker for the elite class in Joseon's highly stratified society. Within the Yangban class, scholar officials who had passed the civil service examinations bore the responsibility of upholding the moral and aesthetic standards established by their predecessors. For these individuals, calligraphy and painting were not merely artistic endeavors, but integral elements of their identity as members of the social and cultural elite. Paintings were produced in lieu of Confucian principles and virtues, which resulted in a distinct East Asian iconography found in ink paintings. In observance to Confucian moral virtues, specific subject matter became mainstream in Joseon ink painting. Most prominent were the four gentlemen: the plum blossom, the orchid, the bamboo, and the chrysanthemum. Each plant symbolized specific qualities admired by literati. Plum blossoms represented perseverance and renewal, blooming even in the harshness of late winter. Orchids symbolized humility and purity, often associated with refined scholarly taste. Bamboo, with its unyielding yet flexible nature, epitomized integrity and resilience. And chrysanthemums, which bloom in autumn, conveyed elegance and longevity. These motifs, often painted in minimalist compositions, were not merely decorative, but served as visual expressions of moral and philosophical values. The act of painting the four gentlemen required disciplined brushwork akin to calligraphy, underscoring the integration of artistic and intellectual pursuits central to Joseon literati culture. Additionally, these motifs often included poetic inscriptions that complemented the imagery, merging the visual and literary arts. The four gentlemen not only reinforced Confucian ideals, but also linked Joseon painters to a broader East Asian cultural heritage. Scholar official painters typically used ink on paper and chose subjects like bamboo, old trees, and rocks, which allowed them to apply the same disciplined brush skills as in calligraphy. This set their work apart from the colorful, realistic styles favored by court and professional artists. The preference of Confucian subject matters also impacted professional artists, and bamboo paintings became one of the most important criteria for court painters. Another key feature of scholar-amateur painting was its use of past artistic styles, connecting each piece to the values and personality of earlier artists, with styles serving as a way to express one's beliefs. Scholar painters often paid homage to famous masters by imitating their painting styles. Literati painting did not focus on strict techniques or detailed depictions of objects. Instead, it emphasized capturing the essence of the subject, relying on the artist's scholarly knowledge, cultural refinement, and brush skills honed through calligraphy. Literati painters aimed to preserve a sense of simplicity in their works, even if their brush skills had reached a highly refined level. This approach highlighted spontaneity rather than technical brilliance. Furthermore, they valued expressing the inner essence of objects, rejecting the pursuit of outward resemblance and realistic depiction. Joseon literati also formed their own culture in the appreciation of paintings. Joseon literati viewed paintings, calligraphy, and other art forms as expressions of moral virtue and intellectual depth rather than mere decorative objects. Collecting art was a way to affirm their identity as scholars and align themselves with the values of integrity, humility, and self-cultivation. The literati particularly valued works that embodied simplicity and elegance, such as ink paintings of the Four Gentlemen or landscapes reflecting contemplative themes in Confucian scholarship. These artworks were often adorned with poetic inscriptions or commentaries, allowing collectors to engage in a dialogue with the original artist and other connoisseurs. This practice also reinforced a sense of continuity with the past, as many Joseon literati sought inspiration from Chinese literati traditions while adapting them to Korean contexts. Through paintings and calligraphy, they fostered a vibrant intellectual and cultural exchange within their circles, reinforcing their roles as custodians of Confucian values and artistic heritage. Art from the early Joseon period generally adhered to the convention established by Song and Ming traditions, reflecting the strong association between art and Confucian ideals that were systematically as insubordinates to China. However, by the late Joseon period following the Japanese and Manchu invasions from the 17th century, artists advanced toward creating a distinctly Joseon style of painting, emphasizing realistic representations of local subject matters. The trend was most conspicuous in landscape painting of the late Joseon period. Impacted by the intellectual movement Shirak, or practical learning, that emphasized empirical observation, reform-oriented thinking, and practical applications of knowledge in areas such as politics, economics, and society, true view landscapes developed in the arts. True view landscape painting was a contrasting style of landscape painting from idealized landscapes that were produced in the early Joseon period that depicted scenic sites in China or imaginary spaces mentioned in Chinese literature. True view landscapes depicted Korean sites from direct observation. Such landscapes were in many ways an expression of national identity and a reflection of the broader intellectual and cultural movement of Shirak that encouraged an empirical approach to knowledge and an appreciation for Korea's unique environment. Late Joseon painter Jeongseon was a pioneer of true view painting. Jeongseon was a Yangban-born painter who lived in the Joseon capital Hansong and frequently painted local scenery such as Ingangsan Mountain, Baegaksang Mountain, and Namsan Mountain that surrounded the capital city. Departing from the idealized landscapes rooted in Chinese traditions, he focused on capturing the unique topography and spirit of Korea, most notably in his renderings of representative natural landmarks such as Kumgangsan Mountain. In order to paint a realistic landscape of the revered scenic site, Jeongseon frequently traveled to Kumgangsan Mountain and blended his direct observations and painting styles used in pictorial maps to capture the beauty of the national landmark. This painting album in the National Museum of Korea is believed to be the earliest dated work by Jeongseon. The album comprises 13 individual paintings along with a colophon that provides its background and a title. According to the colophon, in 1711, Shin Tae-dong, who lived in the same neighborhood as Jeongseon on the slopes of Inwangsan Mountain in Seoul, traveled to the Kumgangsan Mountain for the second time and brought Jeongseon along with him to have him sketch the scenery. The album depicts key landmarks of Naegeumgang, Waegeumgang, and Haegeumgang. Jeongseon employed diagonal and circular compositions tailored to the characteristics of the mountain and applied diverse brush techniques such as 미점준, 피마준, and 수직준. Notably, the depiction of Naegeumgang highlights the prominent jagged mountain tops and utilizes dense compositions. The clear labeling of mountain peaks and the explicit indication of paths reflect the influence of Joseon pictorial maps. His use of bold brushstrokes, dynamic compositions, and an unembellished palette reflected a deep engagement with nature and a growing sense of Korean cultural identity. Through his innovative techniques, Jeongseon redefined landscape painting in the late Joseon period, blending traditional literati aesthetics with a distinctly Korean perspective. Building on Jeongseon's influence, Another key figure in the development of true view landscape painting was Kim, known for his skillful rendering of natural scenes. While the professional court painter was primarily celebrated for his genre paintings, he also contributed to the evolution of true view landscapes by adopting a similar attention to realistic detail and the representation of local scenery. Kim received immense support from his patron, King Jeongju, and was frequently commissioned to produce landscapes of numerous scenic sites of Korea. He traveled to these sites where he produced works from direct observation with an emphasis on the authentic depiction of the natural world. Kim sought to convey a genuine connection to the environment, capturing not only the physical characteristics of the landscape, but also its symbolic resonance in Korean identity, which mirrored the ideals of true view painting developed by Jeongsan. However, compared to Jeongsan, who captured the unique spirit and essence of local landscapes by altering or exaggerating visual elements and symbolically encapsulating the views, Kim-do's landscapes display more faithful depictions of reality and showcase his technical abilities as a professional painter. His intricate renderings of Korean landscapes also exhibit greater influence from practical learning and the gradual introduction of naturalistic painting styles via China toward the end of the 18th and beginning of the 19th century. His integration of local topography with a grounded observational approach furthered the departure from the stylized landscapes of earlier periods, contributing to the full establishment of a distinctive Korean landscape tradition. Beyond the innovations of true view landscape painting, late Joseon painting witnessed the rise of other significant trends that reflected the dynamic cultural and social changes of the period. Genre painting emerged as a prominent trend, capturing the scenes of everyday life, from market scenes and daily work, often with a humorous twist. Artists such as Kim and Shin Yun-bok excelled in this genre, creating works that offered vivid and relatable glimpses into the lives of commoners and elites alike. Additionally, affordable folk paintings produced for the lower class of Joseon society flourished during this time, featuring bold, symbolic imagery and vibrant colors, often used for decorative or talismanic purposes. These diverse artistic developments highlight the rich tapestry of late Joseon painting, showcasing a balance between innovation and tradition. We'll talk more about these developments in the following session. In this session, we investigated some key painting practices and trends in ink painting in the late Joseon period. In the following session, let's take a look at the rise of genre painting and folk painting. See you soon.